Welcome, everybody, to the Fanmouth Daily Fantasy Baseball Breakdown for Tuesday, May the 27th. I'm Joe Marsh, joined by Dave Del Grande. How you doing, Dave?
Dynamite.
All right. Hope you all had a good Memorial Day. We've got a big slate of games, 15 games tonight. We've got a lot of good stuff for you. I think tonight should be a very high-scoring day. Pending the weather, there's a lot of games that may have some rough weather, so I would keep an eye on that closer to game time. But if all the games are played as planned, I don't think 100 points is going to cut it tonight. I think it's going to be very high scoring. There's some good pitching matchups. There's some good hitting matchups. So we've got an eye on them. We're going to help you guys take advantage of those. So we'll start with the pitching. There's plenty of good options. I don't think there's any reason to look beyond the top six. There are actually some good mid-range options, but there's plenty at the top that I don't even think you need to look past. So much so that when I was going through, I took out Scherzer and Darvish just because they're both pitching on the road. Because you have four top pitchers pitching at home with good matchups. My number one choice is Chris Sale. He's clearly, the best pitcher going. He's not bothered by his injury. 189 ERA this season, 11.21 strikeouts per 9 innings, and he's facing the Indians, who are hitting 229 against lefties this season. And Dave, you always like to look at the opposing starting pitching matchup. The Cleveland starting Masterson, who has a 6 ERA on the road. So I think Chris Sale to me is the number one pitcher regardless of price. I think as the fourth highest pitcher, he's an absolute steal. We'll definitely have him in my lineup. And then to pair with him, there's a few good options. You could go Greinke, Hudson, or Sonny Gray. I'm always going to go with the strikeouts, so I'm going to go with Greinke, 10.03 strikeouts per 9 innings. Cincinnati's hitting 237 on the road. Greinke's got a 214 batting average against at home. This way I've got two top strikeout guys. I've got some good lower priced options in the infield. I don't need to save a ton, and I can still afford some top guys. So I think that's going to just help you build a monster lineup. What are you thinking at pitcher, Dave?
Well, I agree with your general premise there that I think there are two absolute standouts at pitcher. They meet like every criteria that I have. You mentioned one of them, which is Sale. Sale, last time he pitched, I was a little concerned because he was coming off his injury. I shouldn't have been concerned because he pitched a great game. He draws, as you said, a weak-hitting Indians team tonight. That's about as good as it gets until you look at Darvish. Darvish tonight is pitching against a Minnesota team that is absolutely lost at the plate, coming off an embarrassing series in San Francisco. Then they went home and faced Tepic yesterday. Tepic, who I actually had in my lineup and was a key to my win, he scored a ton of points yesterday against Minnesota. Now Darvish goes in there. He's averaging 25 points in his last 4 starts. And those are against the Angels, the Red Sox, the Jays, and the Tigers. We're looking at a 30-point night tonight from Darvish. And as you mentioned earlier, something else that I look for in these matchups is the opposing pitcher. Cleveland's got Masterson, Minnesota's got Hughes, two well below average pitchers. So I think that you're looking at 2 easy wins and high strikeout guys there. I don't particularly care for the other guys you mentioned, in part because Greinke goes up. Cincinnati's not a bad team. Simon is a very good pitcher, and I wouldn't want to go against him. Hudson is coming off an injury. He basically hasn't pitched in 3 weeks, and at that point he didn't pitch well against the Dodgers, so I want to see him pitch one time before I go with him. And you mentioned Gray of the A's. Man, he's up against Scherzer, so I definitely wouldn't want any part of that matchup. I do like a low price guy that if you had to go to him because you mentioned I'm not as high as you on the hitters today as I think you are, but there are some very high-priced outfielders that I want in my lineup. And if I'm going to have to sacrifice a pitcher to do that, I can consider it because I think I see one down the list in McHugh tonight of Houston. And McHugh's been pitching great. He's averaged 21.3 points on the road this year. He's got 7 strikeouts in each of his last 2 games. He's going up against a Kansas City team that's completely lost right now as well. They got blown out yesterday by Houston. Houston's clearly the better team in this matchup. Kansas City is a huge disappointment this year. And here's a guy that I think what I look for in pitchers is you have to be able to score at least 1 point per $1,000 invested, and someone like McHugh is going to go way over that kind of bargain tonight. So if not for these two outstanding matchups at the top of the list, I would definitely have McHugh going. So I'm going to have options depending upon where I go with my hitting.
All right. Just getting back to something, you said that Darvish meets all your criteria. Is one of your criteria not pitching at home? You don't care about home and road splits for pitchers?
Well, I mentioned he's got 25 points over his last 4 games. 2 of those games were at Anaheim and at Detroit. I mean, it doesn't get much tougher than that. Facing 2 big hitting teams on the road. So, no, I'm not scared at all. Like I said, Tepish went into Minnesota yesterday and had a monster game. And Darvish is, 5 times the pitcher he is. Minnesota Sunday was doing so poorly, they brought up 2 guys from the minor leagues and immediately put them in 4th and 5th or 3rd and 4th in their lineup yesterday. I mean, that's how bad Minnesota's going right now. Against Vogelsong, made Vogelsong look like an all-star Sunday, made Tepish look like an all-star yesterday. Now they face Darvish in this game. I think he's a great play.
Yeah, so I was looking over because Darvish he allows a lot higher batting average on the road, but Minnesota's a very good pitcher's park as well. It's hard to hit the ball out of there, so that's a decent play there. Moving over to catcher, who do you like at catcher?
Well, I think that hitting-wise, to me, there are 2 matchups that I'm going to play 2 or 3 guys against. One is Miami tonight going up. Miami tonight's against who's Miami playing tonight? Washington. Trinan's pitching tonight for Washington. Washington's got a 387 batting average against left-handed hitters. Miami's got several good left-handed hitters. One of them happens to be their catcher, Saltalamacchia, who's a switch hitter. But this is a great matchup for him at a very good price. I think to me, he stands out among the catchers tonight.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. I like Yadier Molina as well. For a high-price catcher, I probably won't invest that much at catcher, but if you're looking to, he hits 383 at home, 338 against righties, and he's facing Phelps, who's allowing a 301 batting average to righties, so that's a great play. I'll probably go a little cheaper. Tyler Flowers is a guy I like. Going against Masterson. Masterson has really struggled on the road, as I mentioned. Flowers is hitting 348 at home, costs you $5,900 tonight. I think that's a pretty good, cheap catching option.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, moving over to first base. Now, this is kind of a weird night for me because I actually like a few Diamondbacks, which is unusual for me. You look at Paul Goldschmidt, I think, is a great play. He's hitting 353 against lefties and 323 at home. Then you look at Stoltz, who's been bad on the road. 333 batting average against on the road, also giving up a 333 batting average to righties. So I think Goldschmidt's an absolute standout play. For a lower price play, Matt Adams is good. He's got 15 hits in his last 10 games, hitting 367 against righties. The problem is for a first baseman, there's not much power production. So, doesn't score a lot of runs, doesn't drive in a lot of runs. So it's a decent low-priced option, but I'd like to see more at, out of the first base position. And then the one guy that, you look at Encarnacion, who's been absolutely on fire, hitting at home. Jeff always likes to take the Blue Jays at home, especially when they're in the Rogers Center. The one note I'll caution you on is Cobb is pitching for Tampa Bay. He's been really good against righties. He's made 4 starts because he was injured, and he's only allowed 1 home run in those 4 starts. So I would just caution you on, if you're looking for like Encarnacion and getting Bautista in your lineup, Cobb typically doesn't give up a lot of home runs. So what are you thinking at first base?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with what you said there. To me, you can go in 5 or 6 different directions at first base tonight. So I would steer away from the matchups like you said. Encarnacion's been great, but Cobb's been very good. Adrian Gonzalez has good splits against right-handed pitchers, but Simon's pitching against them tonight. He's got a 208 batting average against left-handed hitters. So in a strength versus strength matchup like that, I think I can do much better than that tonight. Goldschmidt is a standout play tonight. Stoltz hasn't gotten right-handers or left-handers out. 333 batting average against right-handers, 7 home runs against. Goldschmidt's my home run pick for tonight, and I'm going to be surprised if he hits only one in this game. Stoltz has been really bad. And I'm almost for sure going to use a first baseman as my DH. There are several good options. I mentioned already the Marlins going against Trinan. Garrett Jones has a 928 OPS against right-handed pitching. Trinan, like I said, 387 batting average against left-handers. Garrett Jones is batting right behind Stanton, so he's up. He comes up with a lot of guys on base when all the team's walking. Stanton, he gets a lot of RBI opportunities, and he's a very, very modest price. So I think he's if you're looking to save money at your utility spot and get high quality, here's a guy to look at.
Yeah, I typically do have a first baseman as my utility. I think tonight will be the exception where I will probably have an outfielder as my utility. A lot of good stuff going on in the outfield that we'll get to. But first, we'll move over to second base. What are you thinking there?
Well, here we go again. Miami's got a big, powerful left-handed hitting second baseman in Dietrich up against this Washington pitcher that I've talked about. He's another guy who I'd have to strongly consider at the second base position. A modest price guy, but a guy I've been touting a lot and has been coming through more and more lately is Green of the Angels. He's actually been playing the outfield, even though he's listed as a second baseman on Fanmouth, a very low-price second baseman, no less. You don't get that kind of advantage very often where you get an outfielder who's hitting well and you get to slot him at second base. He's a right-handed hitter up against a left-handed pitcher tonight. It's a good matchup for him. He's got a 10-12 OPS against left-handed pitching. For a guy who's barely over 4,000 on the Fanmouth charts, it's like, whoa, I can't get enough of these kind of guys in my lineup. So I've got two options there, kind of a higher price guy in Dietrich that I like, or chances are I'm going to be looking to save money there, maybe go with Grant Green.
All right, I like that. Sticking with that team, I like Howie Kendrick a bit for a higher priced option. He's hitting 388 with both of his homers on the road. He's been hot, hitting 325 in May. He's got a hit in 15 of his last 17 games, so I like that consistency there. And then a bit of a roll of the dice. You look at Justin Turner of the Dodgers, qualifies as second base. Just noting that he's hit 2 home runs in his last 4 games. His bat's starting to come around, so he's not a bad option as well. And then over at third base, I didn't list a high price option today. I don't see any need to. The only guy I'm looking at is Pablo Sandoval. 5 home runs in his last 8 games, hitting 379 over that span. Obviously a much better hitter from the left side. 6 of his 7 home runs this season have come from the left side. And I believe he's about the 17th or so most expensive third baseman. So the price has not caught up to him. I really don't see any other direction to go at third base today than Sandoval. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there are 3 other guys that are worth considering, but how can you not go with Sandoval? Like you said, he's got everything going, he's including a low price. He's as hot a hitter as anybody in the league. The Cubs are pitching, a very average right-handed pitcher tonight. Wind's been blowing out to right field at AT&T, as our buddy Jeff continues to point out, and rightfully so. The ball's flying out of there this year. Sandoval has, 5 homers in his last 8 games, and a good matchup tonight. So I'm not even going to mention the other 3 guys that I like because this is such a no-brainer.
Yeah. All right. What do you think over at shortstop?
Well, you probably would have wanted to go first here because I'm going to steal your thunder, I think. A guy you've mentioned a lot, Owings of Arizona, is the equivalent to me of Grant Green at second base. He's a low-price guy, a good hitter. Faces a left-handed pitcher tonight where he hits very well against lefties. I mentioned earlier Stoltz, is a 333 batting average against right-handed hitters. And this is just a tailor-made matchup for a lot of the Arizona guys. But here's one, probably the cheapest of them all, and it's probably the best bargain of them all. So, I'm stealing your guy, but that's the way this game's played.
All right, yeah, so I'll just add on to that because that's the guy who I wanted to talk about as well. Like you said, yeah, Stoltz not good against righties, not good on the road. You have Owings good against lefties, great at home, hits 388 at home. and he's gotten some love in the lineup. You know, he's been hitting second a lot, so I would say double check the lineup today. Make sure he's up in that near that top of that order. But that's a great place. Like I said, I've got a couple expensive pitchers. I want a couple expensive outfielders. So this is a great spot to save some money. I mean, Owen stays very cheap.
Right,
Um,
and let me add, because we probably should add every time they play, is this is not a day to play Tulowitzki. I mean, on the surface, you look at it, you say, Philadelphia's kind of a hitter's park. Hamill's a left-handed pitcher. He's fairly mediocre. Wow, this is Tulowitzki's day. Big right-handed hitter with some power. But his splits are just so terrible on the road. And Hamill's respectable, 258 batting average against right-handed hitters. So if this game were in Colorado, I'd consider paying the price, but on the road, no way.
Okay. Yeah, good stuff. And then moving over to the outfield, I would throw A.J. Pollock in there for a cheap guy if you need him. Like I said, just another part of those Diamondbacks right-handers, especially if he's hitting near the top of the order. Josh Harrison, if you need him, he's a great cheap option. He's hitting 357 against lefties. 311 with 2 homers in May, 9 hits in his last 8 games. He's very cheap. That's just if you need a cheap option. But getting into the big boys, there are some very, very hot hitters in the outfield right now. Puig, obviously on fire, hitting 411 with 7 home runs in May. He's got 8 home runs coming against right-handers, 5 home runs and 68 at-bats at home. So I like him a lot. Nelson Cruz, 4 home runs in his last 7 games. 12 of his home runs have come against right-handers this season. He's hitting 324 on the road, another guy who's on fire. And then we can't talk about anybody being hot without talking about George Springer. 5 home runs in his last 4 games. He's got 8 in the month of May. 7 of his 8 have come against righties. And he's facing Jeremy Guthrie, who's given up 12 home runs this season. So Springer, absolutely on fire. His price has come up considerably, but he's still not in the top 40 as far as outfield prices. He is playing in Kauffman Stadium, so you downgrade him slightly, but he's just been a beast lately. So that's a great play as well. What do you think in the outfield?
Wow, you mentioned 5 guys, and only one of them is on my list, and that's one of the cheap guys you mentioned, which is Harrison of the Pirates. I think another good low-price guy would be Yelich of the Marlins. Again, I talked about playing their left-handed hitters tonight against Treinen. Excuse me. Yeah, Treinen. Here's a guy batting leadoff on a team that I think is going to score a bunch of runs tonight. So he's a low-price guy I would consider. Cody Ross of Arizona, if he's in fact going to play tonight. I checked the lineups on him, but he's a powerful hitting right-handed batter who could give you a home run at a very low price tonight against Stoltz. But all that said, I'm looking at 3 heavyweights tonight in the outfield, and none of them are the 3 that you mentioned. I mean, Trout tonight against a very average left-handed pitcher in Elias. I think, Trout is almost always a good play, but tonight I think he stands out in this matchup. A second guy is, perhaps my top outfield play today would be McCutchen. We talked about Pittsburgh facing a left-handed pitcher, not a very good one at that. He's got a 1394 OPS against lefties. Just a great play tonight. Not even a real high-priced guy either among the outfielders. I think he's a very obvious play in the outfield. And then a third outfielder that I got to look at, even though he's not a lefty hitter, is Stanton of the Marlins. I keep talking about how they're going to score a lot of runs. I think they're going with Yelich and Dietrich hitting in front of him, they're going to be getting on base. I think he's going to have an opportunity. He's been a real hot hitter. He's been hitting home runs. Like I said, they're facing a very mediocre pitcher tonight. For a high-priced guy, I think that he would be my third choice. I think it would be my first guy that I would pull out of there if I ran out of money. But I think you can't go wrong with him either. So those are 3 real outfield heavyweights that may force me to use McHugh as one of my pitchers tonight, but I'm hoping that with Owings going in the infield and Green going in the infield, and maybe using Garrett Jones as as my utility. Sandoval, not a high-priced third baseman, so I'm hoping by saving money at those positions, it will allow me to play some real heavyweights in the outfield, and that's going to be the first thing I look at in my lineup tonight.
All right, some good lineup building stuff there. Yeah, Dave likes the Marlin stack today. That's usually something that I'm into, so I'll never fault you for having a Marlin stack. Yeah, Yelich is great against left-handed pitching as well, so that's always a solid play there. Time for final word. That wraps up all the positions. I'll go ahead and start. For me, it's there are plenty of good pitching options, so I'm not going to knock you. Anyone who has any of the top 6 guys going. Dave mentioned a bit. Yeah, Scherzer and Gray are going against each other, so that might not be the best option. But for me, it's Greinke and Sale. I don't mind Darvish. Sale's clearly the top choice. If you can only afford one guy today, I think it absolutely has to be Chris Sale. Paul Goldschmidt, I think, is a top play. Pablo Sandoval is a must play. Like I said, I really don't like anybody else at third base. Guys like Owings, that will help you build your lineup. And then there are just some really hot outfielders you have to consider the way they're swinging the bat. They do have good matchups as well. But I think Puig, Cruz, and Springer should be in your lineup. Like I said earlier, and Dave mentioned a lot of outfielders. I think my utility will be coming from the outfield today and not from first base. Dave, what are you thinking? Final word.
Well, I think this is one of those days where I'm going to start by penciling in my outfield first. My hitters first, and then going to pitchers, because I think there are 3 pitching options tonight. You have to put at least one heavyweight guy, and I would say, that to me is either Darvish or Sale. And then if you can play them both, I think that's great. If you can't and you need to go to McHugh as your second pitcher and save some money, I think that's fine. But don't make that decision first. Go ahead and fill out your lineup first. As I said, I'm hoping that by saving money, I'm talking about Saltalamacchia catching. He's not a high-priced guy. And Green and Owings and Sandoval, they're not high-priced players. Garrett Jones maybe as my DH. He's not a high-priced guy. So I'm hoping that by saving 1,000 here, a couple thousand there, 3,000 there, that maybe I'll be able to get in all my heavyweight outfielders and 2 heavyweight pitchers. Now, that's certainly asking a lot. I do think that there is some depth in the outfield, as you have mentioned. So if I have to throw Stanton out of the lineup and put in a guy like Harrison that you mentioned, we both seem to like Harrison, then that's something I would do first as well. So, but my suggestion, bottom line is, get a batting lineup that you're comfortable with, see how much money that leaves you with at the pitching position, and if that only leaves you 1 heavyweight, that's fine. If you can get 2 heavyweights in there, then certainly that would be the ideal thing.
Okay, yeah, just to reiterate one more time, check the weather. It looks like there's some rough weather out there today. Wait till closer to game time, but there seems to be some storms coming in. And then, like I said, I think you need to score a lot of points today. I don't think 90 points is going to cut it today. I think you're going to have to be in the hundreds to win your game. That wraps it up for us today. Dave and I will be back tomorrow. In the meantime, you can check our full rankings at blog.fanmouth.com. Follow us on Twitter at PlayFanmouth. Plenty of more good information there. And we will see you tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in.